there's a specific kind of pain nobody talks about. Not the pain of wanting something and never getting it. The pain of getting it and watching yourself destroy it. The relationship was real. The connection was there. And then, without a reason you could defend out loud, you ended it. Or you started a fight that didn't need to happen. Or you found a flaw that 3 weeks earlier didn't exist. The project was working. The momentum was real. And then you stopped showing up. Not because something went wrong, because something was going right. This is the pattern. And if you've lived it, you already know the cruelest part. It doesn't happen when things are bad. It happens exactly when things are about to become what you said you wanted. Most people explain this with a story about unworthiness. I don't deserve good things. Something is broken in me. I'm my own worst enemy. That story feels true because it matches the evidence. But it is wrong about the cause. You're not sabotaging your life because you don't deserve it. You are sabotaging it because a part of your psyche has concluded quietly, completely, years before this moment, that the life you actually want cannot be lived by the person you have learned to be. And getting close to it means one thing. That person has to die. Asterisk. Carl Jung spent decades mapping the architecture of the unconscious, not as a collection of repressed desires, but as a living system with its own logic, its own economy, its own survival instinct. What he found was not a psyche that wants to suffer. What he found was a psyche that will choose familiar, suffering over unfamiliar freedom every single time. Because familiar suffering, at least, preserves the structure. And the structure is the ego. The ego was never designed to make you happy. It was designed to make you continuous. Jung drew a distinction that most psychology skips entirely. The ego, the I you experience, when you think about yourself, the narrator of your inner life, is not the whole of who you are. It is the center of conscious awareness, the part that knows your name, tracks your history, maintains the story of who you've been. But it is not the self. It is a fragment of the self organized around one primary function, keeping the structure intact. In the early years of your life, this function saved you. The ego assembled itself out of whatever materials were available. The responses that got you loved, the behaviors that kept you safe, the identity that made you legible to the people who controlled your survival. It built a workable version of you from the wreckage of what your environment demanded. That took intelligence. That took adaptation. But adaptation is not the same as truth. And the structure the ego built, however functional it once was, is not you. It is a defensive formation, a mask that learned to call itself a face. And the most dangerous thing about it is this. The ego experiences anything that could dissolve the current structure. Genuine happiness, genuine intimacy, genuine success, as something close to annihilation. You feel this as anxiety, as the sudden urge to exit, as the quiet voice that appears the moment things get real and says, "This is too much. This is too exposed. This is not safe." You have probably mistaken that voice for wisdom. It is not wisdom. It is the ego enforcing its own survival at the cost of yours. Asterisk. You did not choose your defenses, you inherited them the way you inherited your first language before you had the words to question what you were learning. Achi saw me point early enough that you cannot fully remember. Something happened that felt like too much. Rejection, abandonment, humiliation, the withdrawal of love at the moment you needed it most. And your psyche did what psyches do it. Organized itself around that event, not to commemorate it, to survive it. The wound became the center of gravity, and everything else arranged itself at a safe distance from the pain. Jung called the mask built over this wound the persona, the face you learned to show the world in order to function within it. In its early form, it was necessary. The problem is not the mask itself. The problem is what happens when the mask wears you. Because the persona, over time, stops being something you put on and becomes something you inhabit. The strategies that once protected you begin to feel like personality. The walls you built against pain begin to feel like preferences. The limitations you accepted to stay safe begin to feel like truth. And at the center of all of it, below the persona, below the ego's careful maintenance of the story, is an identity that has quietly organized itself around the wound, around the struggle, around the absence. This is why the approach of genuine happiness is not experienced as relief, it is experienced as threat. Because the happiness that is coming is not arriving into a neutral space, it is arriving into a structure that was built around its opposite. A relationship that requires real intimacy threatens an identity built on emotional distance. Success that demands full ownership threatens an identity built on victimhood. An excuse transformation that requires change threatens an identity built on the consistency of suffering. The self, as currently constructed, does not just lack room for the life you want, it is actively incompatible with it. Asterisk underneath every act of self, there is a specific terror, not a vague anxiety. A precise threat the ego has identified and is working with extraordinary efficiency to avoid. The first is the fear of greatness, not failure. Greatness. As long as you haven't fully tried, the story of what you could have been remains intact. Sabotage preserves the narrative. Success destroys the excuse. And the excuse for some people is the last thing they have left. The second is the fear of being seen, not observed, seen. Hell, intimacy, real visibility, real success all involve a moment where the mask comes off. The ego knows that what it has been protecting is fragile, and it will destroy the relationship, abandon the project, refuse the opportunity, anything to avoid the moment where the real self meets the real world without armor. The third is the fear of total responsibility. While you don't have the life you want, you have an explanation, circumstances, history, other people. The moment the life you want actually arrives, that explanation evaporates. Every failure from that point forward belongs entirely to you. The fourth is the fear of losing the wound as identity. If you have organized your sense of self around struggle, around being someone who suffers, who fights, who endures, then healing is not liberation. It is erasure. Who are you without the thing you've been surviving? The fifth is unconscious loyalty to family. If those who came before you did not prosper, did not live fully, your flourishing can feel like betrayal. The sabotage becomes a strange act of devotion, staying small to stay connected to those who never got to be large. The sixth, the one Jung returned to most insistently, is the fear of the ego's symbolic death. Real transformation is not improvement. It is the dissolution of the current structure. The ego experiences this correctly as a kind of dying, and it will do anything, manufacture any crisis, produce any symptom, engineer any exit to avoid the threshold, where the old identity ends and the unknown begins. These six terrors do not announce themselves as terrors. They arrive dressed as reasons, as practical concerns, as sudden clarity about why this particular moment is not quite right. The rationalization is always convincing. It is supposed to be the ego is fluent in the language of your own values, and it will use that fluency against you with precision. Asterisk. There's a version of this video that ends with hope, with the reassurance that the work is hard but worth it. That growth is painful but beautiful. That on the other side of your fear is the life you've always wanted. That version would be a lie, not because the life isn't there, but because what stands between you and it is not a challenge to be overcome. It is a death to be chosen. Jung was unambiguous. Individuation, the process of becoming fully oneself, is not the refinement of who you already are. It is the dissolution of who you have been. The ego does not expand to accommodate the self. It surrenders to it. You will know you are genuinely changing, not when things become easier, but when something in you begins to grieve, when the old story, the one in which you are limited, undeserving, defined by what you survived, starts to feel not like truth, but like a garment you have outgrown. That grief is not weakness. It is the accurate emotional response to a real loss. Something is ending. Let it self that emerges on the other side of that threshold is not a better version of the ego that crossed it. It is something that could not have existed until the ego stepped aside. Leave in the comments the moment in this video when you wanted to stop watching. That moment is the work.